Okay, so I'm going to start today with a super interesting question, or an important one at least, right? Even if it's not interesting. Which is your favorite superhero? Let's stick to the Marvel universe because I don't think superheroes outside the Marvel universe exist, right? I know that's a controversial opinion, but let's go with it. So, is it Doctor Strange? Is it Iron Man? Is it Spider Man? Should we talk about Thanos? Now that's a big question. Is he a hero or not? But like, who is it? And irrespective of the answer you give, right? And please tell me it's not Ant-Man. The reality is, none of them individually match up to the Avengers as a team, right? They don't have Fury directing them. You don't have Black Widow coming in and kicking someone's ass, and then Captain Marvel coming in and having an assist. And the team, the power of the team that you get with the Avengers is very hard to beat with any one single hero. Hey folks, I'm Shrivo and you're watching The Big Buck Show. It's a show where we tell you how you can start your investment journey, and more importantly, how you can turn your small bucks into big bucks. So why am I waxing eloquent about Marvel and Avengers? Well, my kids love them, I love them. And honestly, I could talk about another 30 minutes about that, but there is an analogy back to investing, which is, no matter how powerful a stock might be, if you want to balance returns and risk, you're better off betting on a team. And so the superhero team that I want to talk to you about today is global tech majors. Why? Well, A, they're global, so they're selling to the entire world, not to any given market. B, they're driving technology and therefore how society adapts. Everything we do today is embedded within around technology. And honestly, if there was one industry or vertical I would happily bet in, and bet is actually not the right word, I would invest in, but in some sense you're making a bet that will give you the highest returns, it would be the global tech majors. Now, it's a little bit like, do I believe that I can call which company in that group will do the best? Or am I better off saying, as a group, they're going to do really well. And of course, some will go up, some will go down. But with that diversified segment portfolio, I get some reduction in volatility, some reduction in risk, but I also get supercharged returns. If you're not quite sold on the diversification and the technical explanation, right, of risk return, here's another analogy you might find interesting. And let's cue the puppies and the kittens. Which is the cutest one of the lot? Oh, and there, that one was pretty cute too. I can't decide which animal is cuter. I don't know if you can. So there's also the problem of plenty. When I see puppies and kittens, I want to grab all of them, right? They're little balls of fur that you just say, oh my God, that's super cute. And you just, want to watch their videos, you want to play with them, all of that. And with global tech majors, it's something similar, right? There's a plethora of choice. Cuteness abounds. In this case, revenue growth, innovation abounds. And I'd rather actually, if I could, if you could, you'd have all the puppies in your house, right? Why choose one? Right? More the merrier. That's the other reason, which is, hey, forget the risk reward portfolio piece. If you just think about maximizing your opportunity, right? You're better off betting on the entire team. So that's the underlying reason to take a team approach. Let's talk about how you take a team approach, right? Because you're wondering, oh my God, do I have to place 16 different trades? How do I manage this? And actually it's super easy and something that you can do with fairly little effort. And that's what I want to talk to you about next. Okay, so let's assemble your team of Avengers, right? Let's talk about how you can get exposure to global tech majors through a set of exchange traded funds that I think are super easy and actually a responsible way to invest in a segment that hopefully will give you better returns over time. Now, before we go there, let's just remind you what an ETF is. It's not an actively managed fund, right? Because I personally don't believe in actively managed funds. For most people, they don't really perform well over time versus the benchmark return. What we're talking about is really a combination of securities that tracks a certain segment of the market. So in this case, it'll track technology companies. And what it will do is it'll allocate any amount you invest into a preset proportion of a large number of tech companies. And each ETF or exchange traded fund does it separately. Each of them has a different approach. And I'll give you 5 picks that we think are interesting that you should look at. A disclaimer, we have no association with any of these. These are securities you can buy on a US exchange, and there is no marketing arrangement. We're doing this on an independent basis and have no real stake or association with any of these tickers that are traded on US exchanges. So that's important, I think, for you to know. We're not doing this because someone's telling us to. This is truly analysis for you to use if you find it useful. So let's look at the top ETFs we'd recommend. Or rather, that we'd recommend you look at. The first one is the Vanguard Tech ETF. The Vanguard Information Technology ETF, or VGT, tracks the performance of the MSCI US Index, which includes stocks of large and mid-cap US companies from the IT sector. It's largely comprised of tech stocks, but there are also a few financial services stocks that have a strong underpinning of underlying technology. Key names, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, PayPal, etc. What really makes it stand out? A super low expense ratio. What's an expense ratio? It's the amount of your investment that they deduct so that they can rebalance your funds on an ongoing basis, and they cover their costs of administering the ETF. And that expense ratio is only 0.1%. The year-to-date return is about 24%. Okay. The RYT ETF. The RYT ETF is designed to track the S&P 500 IT index. Unlike most other ETFs, RYT follows an equal weighted strategy. What does that mean? It means that instead of saying that we'll allocate the amount you invest based on the current market cap, so the biggest companies get the most share, this has an equal weighted approach. They allocate your investment equally across all companies in the index. What that means is if there is growth in a company that's not as highly valued as another one, you get the benefit of that growth. So it's a different approach to how to allocate your investment across tech majors. Now, the industries also cover computers, peripherals, IT equipment, electronics, wireless telecom, etc. So it's a pretty broad bunch. Expense ratio is 0.4%, and the year-to-date return is around 25% again. The FTech ETF. This ETF provides exposure to over 300 tech companies. However, its holdings are concentrated in a few companies. Apple is about 20% of the ETF. Microsoft is another 15-16%. However, because of the fact that they don't allocate across so many stocks on a dynamic basis, it is a lower expense ratio ETF. So the expense ratio is only 0.08%. And interestingly, because it's weighted to 2 tech majors that are doing really well, the return's actually a little higher in this bull market. The return's around 27% year to date. Okay, so we've covered 3 ETFs, 2 to go, but before that, let's talk about kittens and puppies again. Here's what's important to know. As your kittens and puppies grow, you've got to start training them. So what's important to do is, first let's look at these kittens and puppies. So you have a small kitten, becomes a bigger kitten, becomes an even bigger kitten. Cuteness grows, right? No problem with that. But you've got to manage it better. You've got to train it. So I don't know if you can train cats, but you can train dogs. And you've generally got to make sure you're looking after them. The same rule applies with your investments, right? You'll invest a small amount in an ETF, the equivalent of a kitten, right, for financial cuteness. You will have to make sure that you are actually taking some care into how your portfolio of ETFs is adapting over time. Right? You might start with a technology-focused portfolio of ETFs, but you might bring in healthcare, right? Why? Because Pfizer, Moderna, and other companies are going to make a lot of money because we're going to go back for 6, 7 booster shots a year, right? You might say, hey, I want to diversify into not just large caps, large companies, but smaller companies. So your portfolio of kittens and puppies, otherwise known as ETFs, has to evolve over time. However, start small, start simple. I would suggest start with tech majors. It's a good bet. But over time, make sure your portfolio changes. Now, let's get back to our list of top 5 tech ETFs. We have 2 more to go, and let's see what those are. Let's look at the iShares Expanded Tech Software Sector ETF, or IGV. It tracks the S&P North American Expanded Technology Software Index. This ETF specifically holds companies in the software industry instead of multiple sectors. So you get more exposure to companies like Adobe, Microsoft, Salesforce, Oracle, Intuit, etc. It's got a good mix of large and mid-cap companies. Expense ratio is 0.43%, and the year-to-date return is about 25%. And finally, the XLK ETF. It tracks the tech sector selector index that includes companies from a variety of tech sectors, such as hardware, software, semiconductors, IT services, equipment, etc. This ETF's major strength is that it doesn't solely focus on one niche, but gives you broad exposure. But it primarily includes large cap tech companies. The expense ratio is pretty low at 0.12%, and the total return is again about 25%. So what you see is that there's an interesting mix of strategies. Even when you say you want to invest in global tech majors, there isn't just one approach to it. You can take multiple approaches. However, all of these approaches over this year at least have returned somewhat similar returns, though with different costs. Now, does that mean that in the future they'll all have similar returns? Probably not. There will be some difference in returns, and some of them will do better than others, and they have different cost structures. So, you have choice, but you can't really go wrong by picking 1 or 2 of these and then seeing what you can do. Now, where can you get more information about this? Well, let's take a look at the app I like to use, Appreciate. And again, let's open up the app. You'd search. Let's search for the Vanguard one. You'd put in the ticker. This would pop up. You can actually look at the composition. This will tell you a little bit about what the ticker is, what they're trying to do, and it'll give you information about, the brief particulars that I covered. Again, it's a simple and easy way to invest with one click. Once you've done, 5-10 minutes of research, understood, that this is a reputed listed ETF, and you can invest and make sure that your exposure to the specific tech industry is strong, but at the same time, you don't have to worry about managing investments in hundreds of stocks. So if I were you, I would assemble your ventures, make sure you're feeding your kittens and puppies, and essentially look to invest in one of these ETFs today. So that's a wrap, folks. If you're interested in the materials we've been referring to, you can either look at show notes or look at the link in the description below. This is Shubho signing off from The Big Buck Show. Hey folks, thanks for watching The Big Buck Show, and tell us how you thought about this episode. in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel, please, and hit the notification bell so you get a notification next time a video shows up. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We have a Twitter channel, a YouTube channel, and of course, also an audio podcast. And hey, continue watching us so that you can turn your small bucks into big bucks.